Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, let me start by wishing you all a good day and hope you are doing very well. I would like to thank all of you for joining the International Peace Institute for Middle East and North Africa today for another interesting webinar with interesting guests. And as you may have noticed that these last, I would say, series of webinars have been focusing on the concept of regional integration with a view on the EU, European Union experience, sorry, but with the understanding that a homegrown approach is needed for the Middle East and North Africa region with regard to hoped or expected proper regional integration. And you may also have noticed that we have been focusing on education in particular, as education plays a large part in the success for collaboration and cooperation on a regional level. Focusing on education as a tool for peace, cross-border student exchanges, creating a culture of peace through education, all this is necessary to build resilient societies and prevent violent extremism through youth. Today's webinar will focus on, I quote, challenges of integration in the Maghreb region. And I would like to welcome our key speaker, His Excellency, Mr. Tayyib Bakoush, Secretary General of the Arab Maghreb Union, AMU, known in North Africa, which is a Francophone region as UMA, Union du Maghreb Arabe, to today's webinar. Sid Tayyib, as we call him in Tunisia and in the Maghreb, is a tireless human rights activist and a distinguished academic and writer. Mr. Bakoush, a former Minister of Foreign Affairs in Tunisia, Minister of Education, and spokesperson for the Council of Ministers in the transitional government. With his experience and insight into the region and education, Mr. Bakoush will discuss the challenges, failures, and successes in the Arab Maghreb Union and the lessons to be learned. Following Mr. Bakoush insights, we will have presentations from our two discussants. Ladies first, I'll start with Her Excellency Basma Soudani, Chief of Staff and Director of Political Affairs and Information at AMU, Ittihad al-Maghreb al-Arabi. Ms. Soudani is an expert consultant, trainer in gender and security, as well as advisor to national institutions, foundations, and international organizations. Example, the African Union, UNDP, Konrad Adenauer Foundation. She also created La Ligue des Électrices Tunisiennes, the League of Tunisian Women Voters, an association that aims at supporting the effective participation of women in Tunisian political life. Our second and last but not the least, second speaker will be Professor Jalil Lounas, Associate Professor in Political Sciences, School of Humanities and Social Science at Al Akhawain University in Morocco. Mr. Lounas is Algerian and teaching in Morocco, meaning that this is another example that regional integration would be is not impossible. Professor Lounas was the team coordinator of the AUI Preventing Violent Extremism, PREVEX research program, as well as the MENA Strategic Regional Architecture, MENARA research program. Professor Lounas was also researcher at CERAM, the Center for Research on Africa and the Mediterranean in Rabat, and an affiliated expert in insurgency and transnational radicalism in North Africa and sub-Saharan African region. The EGF, European Geopolitical Forum in Brussels, Belgium. Before I give the floor to Mr. Tayyib Bakoush, I would like to remind the audience to please use the chat function or raise their hands when they seek or ask for the floor to ensure we have a debate and a proper discussion session. I would like to draw your attention that Mr. Bakoush will be addressing you in French, and my dear colleague Dalia will display excerpts of the concise page of his statement on your screen in English. C'est Tayyib, à vous la parole. Merci.
Merci Nejib et rebonjour pour tout le monde. Vous m'avez proposé de parler d'abord des défis de la région MENA. C'est une question qui peut être controversée, car ce qui est perçu comme défi par l'un peut ne pas l'être par l'autre. Mais pour ma part, je peux énumérer un certain nombre de défis. Je pense que le principal défi réside dans le fait que cette grande région n'est pas structurée sur tous les plans. Elle est peut-être structurée dans l'esprit de ceux qui lui ont donné cette dénomination. Mais dans les faits, ce n'est pas une région structurée. Ça, c'est un défi. Un deuxième défi réside dans le fait que la région MENA fait partie aussi d'un espace plus vaste qui est l'espace méditerranéen. Et en face, de l'autre côté, la rive nord de la Méditerranée, il y a une région qui est, elle, l'Europe structurée. Donc, la région MENA, essentiellement la rive sud et un peu l'est de la Méditerranée, mais elle a en face, au nord, la rive nord, une région structurée. Donc, il y a là un décalage entre les deux régions qui ont des liens historiques et des liens aussi, des intérêts dans tous les domaines. Il y a un troisième défi qu'on peut exprimer sous forme de question. Les liens entre le nord et le sud de la Méditerranée peuvent-ils se débarrasser des séquelles de l'hégémonisme colonialiste pour asseoir à sa place des relations égalitaires dans la complémentarité et le développement mutuel? Évidemment, on ne peut pas dire ils peuvent ou ils ne peuvent pas, mais c'est une question qui se pose à juste titre, parce qu'elle est perçue différemment par les uns et les autres. Le nord de la Méditerranée, lui, est structuré non seulement en tant qu'Union européenne, mais également il fait partie de notre ensemble qui est militaire, l'OTAN. Et là, c'est un autre défi de taille, car l'OTAN est une structure essentiellement militaire. Et on peut dire que l'OTAN il avait en face le pacte de Varsovie du temps de l'Union soviétique, l'URSS. Mais l'OTAN est créée bien avant, 6 ans avant, en 1949, alors que le pacte de Varsovie est créé en 1955. Et puis, il a disparu en 1991, suite à l'effondrement de l'Empire soviétique. Donc, l'OTAN reste un ensemble militaire assez homogène, unique pratiquement au monde, avec tout ce que cela entraîne comme velléité hégémonique à l'échelle mondiale. D'aucuns se demandent pourquoi l'OTAN existe encore, puisqu'il n'y a plus de menaces, il n'y a plus d'empire soviétique, il n'y a plus de pacte de Varsovie, donc il n'y a plus que des États en face. Bon. Le problème n'est pas uniquement dans son existence, mais, et c'est là un autre défi, c'est que l'OTAN n'a pas abandonné ses velléités hégémoniques mondiales. Et la preuve, c'est qu'il cherche depuis des années à intégrer en son sein des États de l'Europe de l'Est qui faisaient partie du bloc soviétique. Et cela a entraîné évidemment des problèmes assez graves. Nous vivons actuellement la crise ukrainienne devant nos yeux, qui est une crise qui menace toute la région. La région MENA est concernée par cette crise et la raison peut-être, c'est que l'OTAN cherche aussi à affaiblir ou à détruire peut-être même la Fédération de Russie, perçue comme l'héritière de l'Empire soviétique. En tout cas, il en résulte des menaces qui pèsent sur la région MENA également. Et c'est là un autre souci ou un autre défi. Il va de soi que l'humain fait partie de cet ensemble et donc elle subit également les contre-coups et subit les conséquences de tout ce qui se passe dans cette région. Non seulement l'humain, l'Union du Maghreb arabe, mais également toute l'Afrique, parce que l'UMA est l'une des 8 CER africaines. Elle fait donc partie intégrante du continent africain. Et donc, les conséquences qui touchent l'UMA peuvent avoir des répercussions sur l'Afrique. Et on le voit actuellement au niveau même de la sécurité alimentaire, pas seulement de la sécurité militaire. On pourrait envisager ces différents défis dans tous les domaines. Mais nous sommes obligés de prendre quelques exemples ou de nous limiter à un domaine particulier qui pourrait être, disons, significatif. On pourrait envisager donc cela dans le domaine que je qualifierais d'enjeux culturels et éducationnels et de la recherche scientifique pour illustrer ces problèmes. Les problèmes de l'éducation dans son sens général, y compris l'enseignement à tous les niveaux, y compris également l'enseignement supérieur et la recherche scientifique, sont gérés au niveau du Maghreb par un conseil ministériel sectoriel qui les englobe depuis 1990. Et depuis cette date, ce conseil a tenu 13 sessions. La dernière en 2016, ce qui montre d'abord une certaine irrégularité. Et l'irrégularité entraîne des insuffisances. Quelles sont les principales questions traitées par ce conseil? Ces questions sont exprimées par des commissions spécialisées. La première est basée en Mauritanie. Elle s'intéresse à la langue arabe et l'éducation islamique. On peut là se poser la question, pourquoi lier la langue arabe à l'éducation islamique, comme si la langue arabe ne pouvait exprimer que ce domaine. La deuxième est basée à Tunis, elle concerne les disciplines sociales. La troisième est basée en Libye et s'occupe des mathématiques et des sciences technologiques. La quatrième, en Algérie, elle s'occupe de l'éducation artistique et physique. Et la cinquième, au Maroc, les langues étrangères. On se demande là pourquoi les langues étrangères sont séparées de la langue arabe. Pourquoi ne pas avoir une question globale? C'est une commission linguistique qui s'intéresse aussi bien à la langue arabe avec toutes ses variantes, car il n'y a pas que l'arabe officiel, il y a les variantes régionales, dialectales, etc., tous les niveaux de langue, en plus des langues étrangères. Si on examine la question de la langue qui est centrale, fondamentale, on peut se poser la question, quelle langue enseigner dans telle ou telle discipline? On constate qu'il y a des divergences et il y a une certaine disparité. Et même, il y a une irrégularité. Il y a des fois où on enseigne les disciplines scientifiques en français, maintenant dans certaines universités en anglais, surtout privées. Il y a eu des expériences qui n'ont pas réussi, enseigner l'ensemble des disciplines en arabe, puis revenir en arrière et réutiliser la langue française pour les disciplines scientifiques. Il y a donc là un manque de vision stratégique à long terme. Beaucoup d'hésitations qu'on constate dans certains pays du Maghreb à ce niveau-là, ce qui témoigne de l'absence d'une véritable stratégie à long terme. Même pour l'arabe, on peut se demander dans quel niveau de langue enseigner. Là, je citerai à titre d'exemple et d'illustration un exemple vécu et qui date d'un demi-siècle, bien avant la création de l'humain. Je faisais partie d'un groupe de recherche linguistique en Tunisie. On s'est mis d'accord avec un groupe de recherche en Algérie et un groupe au Maroc pour élaborer un arabe fondamental maghrébin pour l'école de base. Nous avons travaillé sur cela pendant 3 ans en partant d'enregistrements des concepts utilisés par les enfants à cet âge dans les 3 pays. Et à partir de là, élaborer un arabe simplifié qui n'est pas loin de ce que connaissent les enfants et qui fait un lien entre le littéral et ce qui est utilisé par les enfants. Et le but, évidemment, c'est d'avoir une génération d'élèves qui réfléchissent avec des concepts communs et avec une langue commune. Malheureusement, les ministres qui ont reçu ce travail n'ont pas décidé de l'appliquer, tout simplement. Ça fait quand même un demi-siècle. Je crois qu'il y a une possibilité actuellement d'actualiser un travail de ce genre, mais il faut une volonté politique aussi pour le faire, et pour l'appliquer surtout, car la volonté scientifique existe pour l'élaborer, mais c'est la volonté politique qui est nécessaire pour son application. On peut se poser aussi une autre question. Pourquoi la jeunesse, même scolaire, est-elle tentée par l'extrémisme religieux, violent et même terroriste? On le voit depuis un certain nombre d'années. Là aussi, je citerai un exemple que j'ai personnellement vécu à la tête du département de l'éducation nationale en 2011. J'ai interdit catégoriquement l'usage ou le port de niqab, que ce soit pour les enseignants ou pour les élèves. Et là, j'étais surpris par la violence des réactions des terroristes, je dis bien des terroristes qui ont pris d'assaut les mosquées, chassé les imams officiels et qui ont pris leur place pour lancer des fatwas, et parmi leurs fatwas, ma liquidation tout simplement physique, comme apostat pour eux. C'est facile d'accuser d'apostasie. Donc, voilà un exemple de défi aussi dans l'enseignement et dans la jeunesse. Et là, fait remarquable, Madame Besma Soudani le dira tout à l'heure avec plus de détails, c'est en Tunisie qu'on trouve le plus grand nombre de ces jeunes, même éduqués, qui partent dans les fronts, dans les zones troubles, comme en Syrie ou en Irak, en Libye, etc. Fait aussi remarquable, peut-être sous l'influence de cette expérience, lorsque, et là je parle d'une expérience également personnelle, mais qui s'applique à d'autres, en 2015, donc 3 ans après, pratiquement après avoir quitté le département d'éducation nationale, en tant que ministre des Affaires étrangères, j'ai pris l'initiative de convaincre le Conseil des ministres de coordonner au sein du ministère des Affaires étrangères une commission nationale pour élaborer une stratégie de lutte contre l'extrémisme violent et contre le terrorisme en conformité avec les directives ou bien les conseils ou les recommandations des Nations Unies dans ce domaine. Nous avons là également travaillé en associant tous les départements concernés, même des ONG concernées, et une véritable stratégie a été élaborée dans les 3 langues, arabe, français, anglais, et remise. Des copies ont été remises au chef de l'État, Béjirat Sebsi à l'époque, et le chef du gouvernement. C'est un peu curieux, mais le chef de l'État, feu Béjirat Sebsi, ne l'a signé que 2 ans après ma démission du département des Affaires étrangères. Donc, on ne peut pas dire qu'il y avait une grande volonté politique de l'appliquer, puisque c'est resté sur les bureaux pendant plus de 2 ans. À titre de rappel, les départements qui étaient concernés étaient pratiquement l'essentiel, c'était les affaires religieuses, les affaires sociales, sans parler bien sûr de l'éducation à tous les niveaux, l'intérieur, donc la sécurité, la défense et des ONG concernées. Donc, c'est une véritable commission nationale. Nous avons besoin d'ailleurs de faire cette expérience dans toute la région pour avoir une stratégie conforme aux recommandations des Nations Unies pour uniformiser, car c'est aussi l'un des défis dans notre région. Toutes ces questions, évidemment, il n'y a pas que ces questions-là. On peut évidemment parler des diplômes, des équivalences, de la mobilité des enseignants, de la mobilité des étudiants et des élèves, etc. Ce sont autant de questions qui méritent d'être étudiées, sans parler des programmes, rapprocher les programmes, uniformiser les programmes dans la mesure du possible, en tenant compte des spécificités de chaque pays ou chaque région. En tout cas, toutes ces questions pourraient faire l'objet, chacune ou en groupe, de débats, de conférences, comme le débat d'aujourd'hui. À n'importe quel niveau, je pense qu'il est possible de provoquer une dynamique de réflexion dans tous ces domaines qui sont des domaines extrêmement importants sur le plan stratégique. Je me contente de cela pour avancer dans cette réflexion. Je vous remercie de votre écoute.
Merci infiniment, c'est Taïb. Une présentation qui ne me laisse pas surpris venant de vous. Vous avez donné une image, un diagnostic assez percutant, assez réel, lié à notre vécu, à ce que vous avez fait en tant qu'individu, en tant que ministre en Tunisie, et sous le chapeau de l'UMA que vous êtes en train de diriger malgré vent et marée. Je retiens aussi votre appel à ce dynamisme, à cette dynamique de réflexion. Je m'associe sérieusement en tant que International Peace Institute for Middle East and North Africa, et je n'ai aucun doute que en élaborant une sorte de feuille de route, on pourra ensemble toucher à ces défis dont vous avez énuméré quelques-uns. Ils sont très nombreux malheureusement, et je n'ai aucun doute qu'on va, avec la volonté politique qui nous habite, qui nous anime, ainsi que d'autres maghrébins sur tous les plans, je dirais même dans les opinions publiques et officielles, et on n'épargnera aucun effort. Sur ce, je vais inviter Madame Basma Soudani, chef de cabinet. I will invite Madame Basma Soudani, Chief of Staff of Human and Political Affairs, who will elaborate on some aspects of what Sid Tayyib has formulated. And to my dear colleagues and audience, our next speakers will be addressing you in English. Madame Basma, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for your invitation first, and thank you for giving me this opportunity with all of this prestigious audience. I will follow up on Mr. Bakush's presentation, and I think he raised the issue of education, but also with this movement of extremism in the Maghreb region and in Tunisia specifically. But I will follow up about what UMA did for peace and security in the Maghreb level first, and then in the African level, and what also we did as studies in this field to help these groups or these institutions to go straight forward on this topic. So, Excellency, the General Secretariat of the UMA believes that regional integration is the ideal way to put an end to the political, economic, and social obstacles that hinder the smooth flow of goods, services, and capital, and works continuously to achieve this objective. This integration cannot succeed without a peaceful environment in the Maghreb region. It is within this framework that General Secretariat of the UMA is deploying efforts at the Maghreb and African level to establish peace and security in our region, in the region of Maghreb. Peace and security at the Maghreb level, this process was launched with the holding of an extraordinary session of the Council of Foreign Ministers devoted to the issue of security in Algiers on July 9th, 2012, where the Declaration of Algiers was published. There was a stress on the need to combat the danger threatening the Maghreb region within the framework of integrated and coordinated approach within a global strategy. In the same context and following the will of the Foreign Affairs Minister, several sectors ministerial meetings were held focusing on the issue of security. The first of which was the meeting of religious affairs ministers in Mauritania on 2012, then the ministers of the Interior Council at Rabat 2013, and the ministers of Youth and Sport Council in Tunisia 2013, which resulted in the declaration of Nouakchott and Rabat in Tunis, in which called for the implementation of a global Maghreb strategy in the field of security. Four Maghreb working groups emerged from this ministerial meeting related to the security problem as follows. The Maghreb Working Group in charge of the fight against illegal migration held 4 meetings. The last one was in 2016. The Maghreb Working Group in charge of the fight against terrorism, organized crime, and cybercrime held 3 meetings, and the last one was also in 2016. The Maghreb Working Group on the fight against illicit trafficking in narcotic drugs and psychotropic substance, 2 meetings were held. The last one was held in October in Algeria 2016. The Maghreb Working Group in charge of civil protection, they held 3 meetings. The last one was in Nouakchott, also in 2016. And these meetings came up with the results, and they expressed, all of them, a need that UMA has to do some study about this subject and to help them to develop their results, their reports. So UMA now will signed all the protocol with the African Union, and we signed the protocol about peace and security. So I will talk about this in this part. In this context, we restored our position within the African Union, as I said, by signing the protocol of relations between the regional economic community and the African Union on the sidelines of the 30 African Union Summit in Addis Ababa in January 2018, 10 years after all the other RECs, the 7 other RECs. The signature opened the door to the development of activation of partnership between the 2 parties in various fields, including peace and security, according to which the Arab Maghreb Union has become an active partner to the African Union and other African Economic Community in various programs related to the African Union Agenda 2063, including peace and security programs. In this regard, the Arab Maghreb Union General Secretary participated in the Continental Program of APSA Peace and Security Architecture. In this context, a Maghreb early warning system has been set up through the establishment of a data collection and analysis room within the General Secretariat. Also, Arab Maghreb Union, who conducted a structured and detailed study dealing with terrorism threats and organized crime in the Maghreb region, impacts on peace and security, to promote complementarity among UMA member states in peace and security, as I requested in the previous meeting that I mentioned before. The Arab Maghreb Union organized a specialized symposium on December 2020 in Casablanca, where these experts shared the experiences of their respective countries and the efforts made in conflict prevention, as well as the actions to be undertaken to address these impact on peace and security in the region. The studies conducted with a setup of outputs and recommendation enriched by international expert and research centers suggest during the debate session, the selected remarks and proposals will serve as a cornerstone for developing a roadmap that includes the steps and measures to be taken in the case of threats at the regional level. The key recommendations are three. First one is create a Maghreb mechanism to monitor the risks associated with regional money laundering and terrorist financing operations, and to exchange experiences in order to develop solutions to deal with related threats. Second one is to encourage greater and more equitable cooperation between the European Union and the African Union with the member states of the Arab Maghreb Union in the fight against terrorism and organized crime. And the third one, the experts stressed the urgent need for the member states of the Arab Maghreb Union to develop a common strategy to combat terrorism and organized crime. A second study was conducted by the Arab Maghreb Union, entitled The Return of the Maghrebian Women from the Hotbeds of Tension, in order to identify the social economic factors useful for understanding violent extremism among women and developing a study to prevent and combat radicalization and violent extremism. The study invited the Maghreb countries to adopt a concerted common strategy to coordinate public action, both bilaterally and multilaterally, relating to the prevention of radicalization, violent extremism, and terrorism, in order to ensure better management to the societal, security, and political implications of these phenomena. To this end, this study aimed above all to introduce a multidisciplinary scientific research approach focused on gender to allow a deeper, more complete understanding of the phenomenon of the feminization of jihadism. Three conclusions emerged from this study. First, the interest of a gender approach combined with the study of the masculinity allows a relevant reading of the sociological factors that are useful for understanding violent extremism and developing a strategy to prevent and combat radicalization and violent extremism. It is in the relationships between men and women that the fabric of domination is woven, leading to feelings of frustration, resettlement, and exclusion. Jihadist women manage to private sphere and are also active in the public sphere as perpetrators of deadly violence and as supporters of violent extremism men. Despite this variety of roles, when women are sexually and socially subordinated to male domination, which is the symbolic pivot of jihadism. Preventing and combating violent extremism is not a total security issue, but it is rather global and multi-sectorial in nature, economic, political, financial, educational, media, communicational, cultural, and religious, in that jihadism, the dominant and contemporary form of violent extremism, is itself global and transnational. Third conclusion of the study is the urgent need to develop and implement a Maghrebi strategy to prevent and combat the phenomenon of the returnees, in particular women and child, open the way for reflection and general debate among the various actors, political decision makers, and civil society organizations. to the values of an inclusive and diversified society that welcomes all members, women and men, through the establishment of the civil link and a horizontal and egalitarian citizenship that is open to the globalization of sharing and communication. First, and the result of this, Ummah conducted a first ministerial meeting of the Ministers of Women, Family and Truth. To emphasize women's role in peace, Arab Maghreb Union organized the first ministerial meeting of the Ministers of Women, Family and Childhood in the Maghreb in 2018. Among the most important outputs of this meeting were the institutionalization of a Maghreb Council of Women Ministers in charge of women affairs within the framework of the Arab Maghreb Union, similar to other sectorial minister council. Called to make this meeting organized by the Arab Maghreb Union an annual and periodic meeting between the women ministers in charge of women affairs and the Arab Maghreb Union within the framework of the Maghreb Women's Day. They recommend also to the creation of a joint Maghreb mechanism for cooperation exchange to experience and to expertise and experience and support for Maghreb women's bodies and networks, calling for an all national, regional, and international institutions and all components of civil society and political parties to work more to embody the women human rights in reality and in practices, and activate more their role in maintaining security, peace, stability, and development. Excellencies, despite the efforts made by the Secretariat General of the Arab Maghreb Union to establish integration, there is a need to unify the efforts of our member states, and that can happen only if we solve the political issues among our member states, and CUs and CSOs can play an important role in the resolution of these conflicts between, after all, political makers are the voice of their citizens and people. Thank you so much for your listening and attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Very insightful presentation, albeit focusing on one of the main challenges, the violent extremism and its ramifications and sources, be them the educational institutions or other areas that have plagued, as you said, the Maghreb countries and their relations with the international community. And as you have mentioned, Maghreb Union UMA has engaged in organizing the required, I would say, activities or fora to tackle that. And then glad that you highlighted your efforts on women empowerment and the role of women in this important part of the world. And we all know that there is a lot of work to be done there. So thank you very much for that. And without further delay, we will go now to see Jalil Lounas, Professor Jalil Lounas from Algeria, and who's a professor in Jamiat University of Al-Akhawain, a very famous university in Morocco, and he will lead us into another, I would say, aspect of the Maghreb Union challenges and perhaps opportunities. Si Jalil, tfadal.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here. So what I'll be sharing with you today, it's actually the results of a study we have been conducting with the European Union on the experiences of the North African states in combating terrorism. As you can see, the title of the presentation is "What Happens When They Come Back." That's how it's called. The strategies of reconciliation, Musalaha strategies in North Africa toward the jihadi groups. Where is this question? Where does it come from? What does this project come from? Comes from the fact that since between 2011 and 2015, as you know, we had like 40,000 people, foreign fighters went to Syria and Iraq. Out of those 40,000 from all over the world, and out of those 40,000 people, 7,000 came from North Africa, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. 2011 and 2015. In addition to this, we had at least 2,000 to 3,000 foreign fighters from North Africa who went to Libya. And finally, we've got the phenomenon of the foreign fighters, North African foreign fighters in the Sahel. Now, to that extent, this represents an important mass of foreign fighters coming from North Africa. Starting from 2014, 2015, we've got the phenomenon of what we call the return. The people those terrorists start coming back to their home countries, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria. And to that extent, the big question was, what do we do with them? The question is even more important that, as you can see, as I mentioned this in PowerPoint, the foreign fighters, the North African foreign fighters were extremely important. I mean, to give you an example, they were so important in Syria that, for example, they were able, the Moroccan, Tunisians, Algerians came together and created this organization called Harakat Sham al-Islam, which was one of a very powerful brigade of Jabhat al-Nusra. The Libyans created al-Batar Libi, which was one of the most powerful brigades of Daesh. We have also the organizations Haras al-Din, who's still affiliated with Al-Qaeda, where we have an important number of North Africans. To that extent, I mean, this was a major question. It's a major question. What do we do with them once they come back? Do you keep them in jail? How do you deal with this topic? What this will do with the topic? Actually, what happens is that the North African states have put in place very robust, very effective strategies to deal with those foreign fighters returnees. The strategies are called Musalaha strategies. We have the Algerian Musalaha strategy has been actually put in place since the 1990s. And we have Morocco. Morocco established a very robust one as well called the Musalaha since 2016 to 2017. I'll be covering in my presentation. Tunisia, on the other hand, has created a program called Tawassul, and then we'll be talking about this in the last part of the presentation. However, here are some issues that made it very difficult for the implementation of this program. But before going further, let me maybe deal with the concept of Musalaha. Musalaha. Okay. Okay, these are a few pictures of the foreign fighters abroad, as you can see. I mean, with the Moroccans, Tunisian, Algerians abroad. Now, what does it mean, Musalaha? Musalaha comes from the Arabic word, reconciliation. It's a legal concept that exists in Islam. It's derived from Islamic jurisprudence. And basically, the idea is to terminate the conflict between two or more parties in society, to avoid fitna, to avoid future conflict between those parties. The idea here is that you can bypass the judicial system. Okay, you can bypass the judicial system by this concept. In this case, you will have somebody who will come and mediate between those actors, and the actors agree for this mediation. Eventually, they will terminate one and for all, definitely, any conflict, and basically, and it's an important part, they bypass the judicial system. We have as well the concept of demobilization. Demobilization in reality means that the people who have been involved in conflict renounce to the violence. Okay, it's a renunciation to the violence, but they do not renounce the ideas that have motivated the violence. Opposed to that, we have the concept of de-radicalization. De-radicalization means what we call a cognitive change. That is to say, the ideas that motivated you to get into the violent extremism, you renounce the ideas. The ideas of this, the ideas that led you to commit those crimes. Now, Algeria. Now, let's move to Algeria. Algeria shows actually strategy, what we call Musalaha al-Wataniya, which is in fact national reconciliation, which is in fact a strategy of demobilization. It's a strategy of demobilization. What does it mean? Between 1992 and 1999, as you all know, there was what we can call now a civil war in Algeria. At the peak of the civil war, 1,000 people were killed per day. 1,000 people were killed per day. So the Algerian authorities basically needed to stop the violence. It needed to stop the violence at any cost. that extent, what happens that starting from 1996, the Algerian authorities, the intelligence services started to reach out to some jihadi groups, especially the Islamic Salvation Army, IS, Army Islamic Islamic. And basically, they entered into negotiations with them to reach a ceasefire, to end the conflict. In 1997, after 1 year of negotiations, the AIS agreed to the ceasefire, to stop the attacks. What happens is that actually other groups, other katibats from other jihadi groups heard about the ceasefire and actually entered into calls and discussions with the Algerian authorities to see if there was a possibility of actually beneficiating from the measures of the ceasefire. This is the beginning of what we call the strategy of national reconciliation, which was put in place by President Bouteflika, formally speaking, starting from 1998 onward. It lasted from 1998 all the way to 2014. So what does it mean, this strategy of national reconciliation? It means that the Algerian authorities would reach out to all, and I insist on this, to the organizations themselves, or to the katibats, or to the groups, or to the individuals. Okay, they reach out to them and offer them, it's very simple, they offer them amnesty. Okay, they offer them amnesty plus incentives to reintegrate the society, economic incentives. In exchange of this, either the organizations, katibats again, the groups, or the individuals renounce violence. Okay, it's very simple. They ask them to renounce violence, number one. Number two, they expected to share intelligence information on the groups still in activity in place. And three, they expected to convince fellow jihadists to also come down from the mountains. It's what they did. And actually, this is what they did. But extent, again, this is what we call a strategy of demobilization. Renounce violence, you receive amnesty, share with us information, convince others. In exchange of this amnesty as well, you receive amnesty. You also receive what they call professional reintegration. You are reintegrated in your former jobs. You also receive facilities for obtaining loans from the banks if they wanted to establish to invest to investments. They also received facilities to receive housing, apartments and so on, at every levels. Also, the Algerian authorities established at every wilaya, every Algerian department, in the police stations, a special department who were to deal with those returnees, people coming back from the mountains. They receive, for example, to facilitate the reintegration at the local level. Receive papers, for example, facilitation on receiving papers, passports, ID cards, calling for the banks, housing, and all that. You need somebody who would help you out at the local level. But this is what the Algerian authorities did, and it worked very well. Between 1999 and 2014-15, 15,000 people benefited from these measures. Okay, 15,000 people benefited from these measures. The figures are there. 200 people out of those 15, 200 people relapsed into violent extremism. 300 were actually assassinated by jihadists themselves for treason, betrayal. Okay, to the extent, and in addition to this, since between 2017 and 2022, 150 people who were in the Sahel, this is where you have the bulk of the Algerian foreign fighters, benefited from these measures and returned to Algeria, and actually provided a huge amount of information to the Algerian security services to combat violent extremism in the south. This is today where we have the most important threat for the Algerian authorities. Now, something very important to mention. Not everyone benefited from those measures. The laws were very clear. The people who were committed crimes against the civilians were not to benefit from any of these measures. Okay, the people who committed rapes, slaughtered, killed civilians, or put bombs in public areas, those people were not to benefit from any of those measures. Now, to that extent, today you still have something like 200 to 300 people who are in jail. 300 people in jail who were not released. New President Tebboune actually has passed a law last summer, to deal with those people who are in jail with the possibility actually of receiving amnesty to finish, they call it, complete and finish close the file of national reconciliation. In addition to this, the authorities seems to be trying to actually considering to extend actually this new amnesty to the people who are still in the mountains who actually could not previously benefit from those measures. Again, to that extent, this strategy worked very well in the sense that it restored peace in Algeria. Restored peace, as you can know today, it's very rare that you have occurrences, attacks, the terrorist attacks. The problem, on the other hand, it's regarding the victims. I managed to interview a lot of victims of violence, extremism, of terrorism, women who are victims of violence, raping, and so on. In this case, I mean, when you talk about reconciliation, we mentioned truth, justice, what happened to us, what happened to the people who lost their close ones. On this side, the Algerian authorities were very clear what is important, it's peace, okay, the restoration of peace. To that extent, if you want, an important issue here is the victims. So the victims were not addressed. They simply received 7,000 euros, certificate of death, and that's it. So they're close ones. To that extent, we have something like 10 to 20,000 people, depending on who you talk to, who are considered as victims of violent extremism, but did not really, they didn't, I would say in French, ils n'ont pas fait leur deuil, when you talk to those people. And that's the slibiyat, the negative part of this strategy. But again, actually, it seems that the authorities are trying to address as well this issue, but at this point, but we don't have any information on what's gonna happen. On Morocco now, Morocco established, on the other hand, that's elements of the national reconciliation strategy. It's Bouteflika was campaigning there was a referendum in 2005 for the reconciliation. This is you can see Musalaha al-Wataniya. It's raise your hand. On the left side, you've got a picture of Madani Marzaq and Ismail Lamari was the head of the intelligence services, and Madani Marzaq, the head of the AIS. During those negotiations, and down here it's Hassan Hattab. You can see Hassan Hattab is the founder of the GSPC, Groupe Salafiste pour la Prédication et Combat, which is today Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb. Hassan Hattab surrendered in 2004 to benefit from national reconciliation. Himself directly, he brought down with him 400 people. In addition to this, between 2004 and 2010, he managed to convince an additional 500 jihadists from coming down from the mountains. At the extent, people evaluate that his surrender allowed to nearly 1,000 people to as well surrender. Morocco, on the other hand, chose that it's made a different choice. It's rather than demobilization, it made the choice of what we call de-radicalization. Now, here Morocco, something we need to mention here, that the phenomenon of violent extremism in Morocco is different from the one that we have in Algeria. In Morocco, it's essentially an externally induced phenomenon. That is to say, essentially composed of foreign fighters. We do have in Morocco terrorist cells. You can see security services arrest on a regular basis people involved in terrorism. But essentially, here self-constructed cells. On the other hand, linked to Daesh, linked to Al Qaeda, it's essentially foreign fighters. Between 2011 2014, and according to the Moroccan authorities, something like 1,600 people left Morocco to go to join the zones of tensions in Syria and Iraq. Starting from 2014, 2015, those people as well started to come back to Morocco. In this case, Morocco started to put in place in 2016 a strategy called Al-Musalaha. So it's rather than a strategy here, it's a program. It's a special program to deal with returnees. And here, the Moroccan program is what I would call a comprehensive program of de-radicalization. Now, it's very different from the one that is put in place in Algeria. In Morocco, this program, it's on voluntary basis. You apply for this program. You're not asked to do it. It's offered, but it's a personal decision on the part of the person to either join this program or not. What happened is this: when you come back from the zones of combat, you go to jail. You go through the whole judicial process, and you're condemned to prison or whatever. Once you've been condemned, the authorities, you hear about this. There's a program called Musalaha, and basically, you on an individual basis, you apply or not for this program. Now, this Musalaha program, it includes. It's a sort of workshops that last between 6 weeks to all the way to 3 months. It's a series of workshops with psychologists, imams. It also involves professional trainings, and also there is a part of this program that deals with victims, although it's not very well developed. It's essentially the psychology, religion, and professional training. For 6 weeks to 3 months, you will be involved. You'll be involved in discussions with psychologists, the imams, and the idea is basically to address the cognitive element. What led you to join jihadi? With the idea of changing the system of thinking. So what to say, the idea is to trigger a cognitive change in the individuals. At the end of this program, the commission, there's a special commission, which will meet and basically evaluate your progress. Okay, based on reports from the psychologists, the religious imams, the imams, also the trainers, the security services, and the prison institution. How have you improved? Is it better, and so on. And then the commission will make a recommendation to the king, basically, which include possible of amnesty, release, or reduction in terms of jail sentence, or no release at all. Since between 2016 and 2022, it's a tailored program. Literally, it's a tailored program. Okay, they meet with the individuals first, they evaluate the individual's needs, and then you go to the program. Something I forgot to mention is very important. It's tailored program. Okay, they meet with them, they discuss with them, and then they assess whether you need more psychological support, or is it more religion, and so on. It's more religion. Literally, it's one of the strengths of this program. It's this tailored element. Why it's done is because of the limited number as well. It's not like Algeria when you had 15,000 people involved in jihadism. At the end, to that extent, once you have finished the program, the commission makes the recommendation, and then eventually you're released. The major issue is what happens once you're released from jail. As much as the program is very well structured at the top, the problems once people come back or come out from jail, they face major issues regarding acquiring papers to take a job, jobs into integration, problems of the society, and so on. Here, it's a major issue, and in this case, you really depend on the area we live, the police, and so on. This is the weakness part of this program, which is currently addressed. So there's a return, the retour sur expérience, a return experience now at the level of the authorities, and they're working now to deal with this post-release jail release to better reintegrate the people. But nonetheless, an important element is that 600 people benefited from this program so far, and we have almost no relapse. We interviewed, met with people, interviewed the officials, and so on. They said maybe less than 10 people actually relapsed. But at the difference of people who did not benefit from this program. But to that extent, the program is very demanded now. There's a lot more and more people who are applying for this program, and actually, it's very, to that extent, it's very, very successful. The problem is that it's not generalized yet. It's not generalized. But again, it's a very successful experience, and we combine. I mean, for the EU, we combined Algerian and Moroccan experiences, and we're trying currently to see what are the possible. If there is what we call North African program possibilities, Namudaj, North African Namudaj. Finally, Tunisia. And, so here it's at the end. This is pictures of people at the end of the Musalaha program. There's a ceremony where all the there's a ceremony where you receive a sort of certificate in the presence of the Moroccan authorities, and then you're released from jail. Pictures were taken. Then this is the last promotion in May. Tunisia, on the other hand, it's very different. Tunisia, there is no, and I'll stop it here. Tunisia, there's no program put in place as such. Why? In Tunisia, there's a program. I saw there was a program called Tawassul. Tawassul is a sort of combination of the retour of experience of Morocco and Algeria that's put in place. It's a very well detailed program. It exists on paper. It's very well structured, very well elaborated. I mean, I was shown the program. It includes psychological elements, the religious element, amnesty, police. I mean, it's really well on paper. It's really well. It's a very robust program. Probably, as somebody say, it's more robust than probably the Moroccan and the Algerian one. The problem here, it's on the political level, and institutional level. The problem, it's number one, it's because of the violence that took place in Tunisia, there was strong resistance to, apparently, what we were told, within the state, within the society, including the no to return. 2015, there was a demonstrations called no to the return of the foreign fighters. One of the issues. Moroccan foreign fighters did return, the Tunisian foreign fighters did return in Tunisia, but the program also was never implemented, never put in place. So the one problem apparently was due to the resistance from the society, resistance from political parties, but above all, it's the lack of what they call human resources and financial resources. Lack of human resources in the sense that those programs required highly trained people. For example, when you go to Algeria, when you go to Morocco, the imams are highly trained people. It's specialized people, highly trained people who deals with those programs. And apparently in Tunisia, there was a major lack of the human and capital resources. Also, well, again, the political resistance. But the extent, the issue is this: when the people come back to Tunisia, they go to jail, they come down to 5-10 years of prison, and then they're released from jail. Once they're released from jail, they're essentially checked by the police. It's on its surveillance. They enter surveillance from the police. They found it very difficult. It's very difficult for them to find jobs. It's very difficult for them to find housing. Basically, reintegrate in the society. When we met some of them, and this is here, it's one of the psychologists who was dealing with them. He said a lot of them come from marginalized environments in Tunis. The marginalized environments and formal networks used to allow them to survive. The poor semi-urban networks of Tunis. illegal networks, just to allow them to basically survive in the society. But once they went to Syria and Iraq, once they come back, they were in jail, they were released, even those informal networks did not want to work with former terrorists. To that extent, they found themselves, and here I quote one of the members of security services and also psychologists told us that the problem is that they found themselves isolated in already marginalized environments. Okay, and that's one of the major problems. And here I will stop it here. Psychologists told us in Tunisia that the aim was to be a hero for those people, because foreign fighters, bulk of them came from marginalized environments. The aim, they thought that by going to Syria, Iraq, they would move from being the zeros to heroes. And actually they went from, it's a very strong sentence, we believe it was that they went from being zeros to return to be zeros. Nothing happened. They went to Syria, they did all those horrific things. They came back, there's nothing. And when they leave, they could leave the jail, they're back to where they were, and often more, even more difficult situation. Donc voilà. I'll conclude here. I think I took a lot of time. I'm sorry. I'll stop it here. Bottom line, I think we have robust, in North Africa, we have robust programs that we could probably put together. This is the idea, what we're doing with the European Union, trying to see the different experiences that we have in North Africa. There's another team that is working on Mauritania, the Munasaha program. And at the end of the day, what we would like to do, this is what we're going to be doing at the end of the 2023, is try to put all those experiences together and see if there is what we call North African, Maghribi, as we called it, Namudaj. Thank you very much, and my apologies if I was too long.
Thank you very much, Professor Jalil Lounes. Very important focus on one of the main challenges to the Maghreb's scheme of integration and aspiration to unity, terrorism, violent extremism, and impressed by how you devoted all these efforts to research into that field. And we will get back to you later on with a few questions, but thank you again. And I will now open the floor to the any questions. So please raise your hand or put your questions in writing if you wish, because I'd like in English or Arabic. So if in English, I will have to translate them to see Tayyib Bakush. Thank you very much. Yes, Dalia, go ahead.
Abdul Nabi Al-Akri raised his hand.
Abdul Nabi Al-Akri.
Good morning, and thanks to...
Good morning again. Abdul Nabi Al-Akri is a human rights activist and a civil society pioneer in Bahrain.
Okay, thank you, friend Nejib, and thanks for the distinguished three speakers, Tayyib Al-Bakush, Secretary General of AU Arab Maghreb Union, and Basima Sudani, she's in this, I think, in the administration of the Secretariat, and Dr. Jalil Nas, who is experts. I have three quick questions. It is noticed that the steps, I mean, the momentum of the Maghreb, Arab Maghreb Union, the momentum means the meetings, the implementation of tasks and so on, has been slowing down up to the extent that for years now we don't have even a ministerial meeting or summit meetings. On the other hand, there has been conflict of, let's say, strategic choices of the different, the four. Of course, we know that now Libya is in sham and in instability, not internal conflict, and so it's not. It has to be left out of this impasse or left out of the situation. So before speaking about the role of Libya, for example, in EMU, but what my question is that in this situation where there are conflicts of the strategic choices of individual members, we know that, I mean, and to speak frankly, the relation that member of towards the Middle East issue. I mean, there has been alliance of Morocco or directions of Morocco to accommodate with Abraham Accord and to be, part of relationship with Israel, while there is contradictory or counter, let's say, tendency, at least by Tunisia, Algeria and Tunisia. In addition, so to the extent that there has been a tension, there has been a kind of disconnection between the two the biggest two countries in the area. So how can you, the second is the Sahara question, the Sahara problem, which has not been resolved, and is still a chronic problem, causing a conflict between also the two major countries, I mean, in Maghreb. So in the presence of this, I mean, before resolving such conflicts, how can you put a policy of integration? And we know that even the borders are closed, and there is no between Algeria and, for example, Morocco, the territorial, and there is very limited. So how can you put a strategy and implement a strategy of, let's say, integration towards, and you said, my friend Nejib, towards unity? I mean, this needs sustained and basic, let's say, basic strategic choice, that the priority should be for the Maghreb, the members of AMU, in decisions and consensus on strategic choices, agreements on basic choices of policy for regional and foreign policy. In the absence of that, how can you go on integration? My second question is concerning the reconciliation within Islamic movement. We know that, I mean, there has been a recess, or there has been addressing this reconciliation in different parts, except for Libya, which is in a state of armed conflict. But to what extent is that this reconciliation and rehabilitation of Islamist radicals and so on is to integrate, that there is comprehensive policy to integrate them in the society, and to be members, fruitful, and say members of in the society, and that they are convinced, and the society is convinced, and the state is convinced that these people are, there is a really, let's say, a strategy for integration, and not just a compromise or something like that. These are my two questions. Thank you for the speakers, and of course this topic is very diverse, so we need maybe specialized sessions on each aspect of this the seminar. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Abdel Nabi. To react maybe to your conclusion, it is diverse, it is a complex dossier, and His Excellency Nejib Bakoush made it clear that this is just an introduction to the very, I would say, broad Maghreb Union file, and of course we will have to get back soon with more focused and more detailed sectoral approaches. طيب صديق عبد النبي العكري يلاحظ مثل ما الجميع بطء مسار المغرب العربي، ويتساءل في ظل النزاعات أو الفوارق بين السياسية بين بعض البلدان، ويذكر منها التوتر بين الجزائر والمغرب، وبما وقع انضمام المغرب إلى اتفاقات أبرام، كيف يمكن في هذا الإطار الخوض في استراتيجية تجاه مواصلة مشروع المغرب العربي، وفي هذه الأجواء، في هذه التحديات التي هي عنوان هذا اللقاء، كيف ترون الحلول الممكنة، وكيف ترون مسار العمل؟ السؤال الثاني يتكلم فيه عن المصالحة بين الدولة وما سماهم الأستاذ لوناس العائدين من بؤر التوتر والراديكالية. كيف يمكن أن تؤدي هذه الجهود التي المفصلة التي تحدث عنها وتناولها السيد لوناس، كيف يمكن أن تؤدي إلى إدماج العائدين في المجتمع المجتمعات المعنية. الأسئلة موجهة إلى التوقع إلى سي طيب، ثم إلى المتحدثين الآخرين، وأخص بالدكتور سي عبد الجليل الأناس. سي طيب تفضل.
تريد أن تكون الإجابة فرنسية ولا عربية؟
بالفرنسية، وسوف أحاول أن أترجم إلى الإنجليزية أو بالعربية مثل ما تفضل.
لا، يعني هل هي مفهوم من الجميع أم أستعمل نفس اللغة الفرنسية؟ هذا
أوكي واضح. تسمح لي بس بعد كل فقرة أن نترجم أو نحاول، إلا إذا كانت السيدة بسمة تفضل القيام بذلك.
أستاذ نجيب، أعتقد الغالبية العظمى كلهم يعرفون العربي، يعني ما أدري من اللي ما أو يمكن
استعمل العربية.
استعمل العربية. أوكي استعمل العربية.
الخلافات الموجودة بين الدول المغاربية أولا ليست موجودة بين الدول المغاربية وحدها، بين الدول الإفريقية توجد خلافات كبيرة، في العالم العربي خلافات كبيرة أيضا. القضية السورية مثلا ومحاولات عزل سوريا، ثم الآن محاولات العودة أو إعادتها، كل هذا يجعل أن كامل المنطقة، وفيما يتعلق بمنطقة مينا أي الشرق الأوسط وشمال إفريقيا، الخلافات مع إيران، مع بلدان الخليج، فكامل المنطقة فيها خلافات، ليست إذن هي خلافات خاصة بمنطقة المغرب الكبير. هذا من ناحية. من ناحية أخرى، القضايا الخلافية كقضية الصحراء مثلا هي سابقة لنشأة اتحاد المغرب الاتحاد المغرب العربي. اتحاد المغرب العربي نشأ في سنة 89 من 700,000، بينما قضية الصحراء موجودة من أواسط السبعينات. إذن لم تكن عائقا دون قيام الاتحاد، ولهذا فالمسألة هي فقط في الإرادة السياسية الجماعية لتجاوز الخلافات. ونحن في منطقة المغرب الكبير أمام مقاربتين: مقاربة مغربية ترى أن حل المشاكل الثنائية أساس للبناء الجماعي، مقاربة جزائرية تقول أن العمل الجماعي يجب أن يتواصل وستحل مشاكل أخرى شيئا فشيئا. أنا شخصيا سئلت هذا السؤال وكان جوابي أنه يمكن، لا مانع من أن نقوم بالعملين معا. لا مانع من أن تكون هناك لقاءات حل مشاكل جماعية ولقاءات حل مشاكل ثنائية، ودعوت لذلك في عدة مناسبات. المهم هو أن هذا لم يعق الأمانة العامة عن العمل والاشتغال المنتظم اليوم. فلنا حجم عمل في الأمانة العامة ضخم. أولا، جميع القطاعات الوزارية المختصة تجتمع ويشارك فيها الجميع بصفة عامة في جميع القطاعات. ثانيا، نحن نعمل في الإطار الإفريقي وننشط في جميع الهياكل الإفريقية باعتبارنا جزء من الاتحاد الإفريقي. ثالثا، نحن ملاحظون بانتظام في العمل 5+5، أي البلدان المغاربية 5 والبلدان أوروبا الغربية 5. إذن ما يسمى بصيغة 5+5. هذا لم يمنع أيضا العمل في هذا الاتجاه. بالإضافة إلى هذا، نقوم بعمل كبير في اتجاه تشريك المجتمع المدني، ومن خلال البلديات مثلا نظمنا عديد اللقاءات حول مواضيع هامة ويعقبها عمل مشترك للبلديات باعتبارها قريبة من المواطنين ومن مصالح المواطنين. هذا فضلا عن عديد المشاكل القضايا الأخرى التي تهتم بها الأمانة العامة في هذه مناطق جامعة. فلذلك لا يمنع هذا لا لوجود خلافات فيتوقف كل شيء. الخلافات موجودة وربما ستتواصل مدة من الزمن، لكن هذا لا يعوق عملنا في اتجاه المساهمة في البناء المغاربي.
شكرا جزيلا. شكرا. Anybody who needs a brief translation, please voice it, otherwise we carry on. Yes.
Okay. Should I respond to this question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so for the second question, my understanding is that the return must not be seen as a compromise of society. It's that was the question, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. No. Look, I'm just gonna respond to this by directly. You know, like yesterday, I was last week I was interviewing former people in Algeria, in this case, the Islamic Salvation Army, who came back from the mountains, and they were literally furious when I was interviewing the founder. They was literally furious when I used the word musalaha and so on, because they said there was no reconciliation, because they said that the government did not keep its promise to change the society by the Islamia, and that it was about political change and so on, according to their own views. So that my point is that no, it's not. They call, all of them called the musalaha as a tool, an instrument. That's how they describe an instrument pour gérer la crise. That's how they describe those strategies rather than une solution à la crise. To that extent, no, the strategies are not about a compromise between the society on the foundation of society. It's simply to offer a way to end the violence and to offer a way out for those people without having them, without compromising on what are the foundations of the Moroccan, Algerian, nor the Tunisian society. It's not about a return to extremism, violent extremism, and so on. It's just, you are a former terrorist, offer you my hand. Come, literally, it's one of the member of the Moroccans and Algerians doing the same thing. It's about, I offer you a way out for what you put yourself into. C'est une façon de vous donner le tendre la main, vous sortir de la situation dans laquelle vous êtes mis. Rien d'autre. It's not about compromising the foundation of society, and absolutely not. And again, when I met and interviewed those people, it's quite the opposite. They're furious because of this. Literally, they call this an instrument of managing the crisis rather than solving the crisis. And when they call it solving the crisis, it's solving the crisis according to their own views. Okay. Donc, voilà ce que, quand je translate in French, ils appellent ça, donc pour eux, c'est un instrument de gestion de crise et non pas une solution à la crise telle qu'eux l'ont vue. Donc, il n'y a aucun compromis, there's no compromise on the part of the authorities. If you look at Algeria or Morocco, in this case, there's no change there's absolutely no change in the foundation of the state, in the structures, in the approach in the society, and so on. It's either induced by the government itself or not. It's not by the terrorists. Again, it's a way to offer a way out. It's not about compromising on the society and the values and foundations.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
We'll do
Go ahead.
just a small comment to
Yes.
Dr. Tayyib. When you say that, well, business as usual, or there are meetings, there are secretarial meetings, but we are looking on the ground. When there is a civil war in Libya, and the AMU, the Arab Moroccan Union, could not intervene, could not, let's say, being able to play the major role in, let's say, restoring peace and reconciliation to one of its members. This is what I am speaking.
Yeah.
When there are borders closed between two neighboring countries, when there are, what I mean, with all due respect to your efforts and the Secretary General, but on the ground, is there, for example, a progress or regress or real making of unity, or the status quo? This is what my question.
Yeah, thank you, Abdel Nabi. سؤال طيب. يتساءل عبد النبي مرة أخرى على ما يمكن أن نلاحظه على الميدان هو من تقدم أو المحرز على مستوى بناء المغرب العربي، ويذكر بموضوعين اللي هما الحرب الأهلية في ليبيا، حيث يقول أن بلدان المغرب العربي عاجزت عن تفادي الحرب أو إيقافها، ثم يشير إلى موضوع غلق الحدود بين بلدين مغاربيين. كيف يمكن أن نقول أو تقول أن العمل متواصل فيما يسمى business as usual؟ تفضل سي طيب.
شخصيا ذهبت إلى ليبيا في بعد اتفاق الصخيرات إلى اليوم مرتين للمساعدة على إيجاد حل، ولنا تصور في الأمانة العامة للحل السياسي السلمي في ليبيا. لكن ما ألاحظه هو أن كل بلد يحاول أن يقدم حله بصفة عامة في الاتصالات الثنائية، لكن يجب أن نعترف أننا لم نستطع إلى حد الآن في أن نقوم باجتماع خاص بليبيا في المستوى المغاربي. وطلبت من وزارة الخارجية في عدة مرات أن يجتمعوا، ويكون من جملة نقاط الاجتماع جدول الأعمال هو حل مغاربي أو بإشراف مغاربي سياسي سلمي في ليبيا. وأعتقد أنه ممكن إذا توفرت إرادة سياسية جماعية في نفس الوقت، أي بدون أن يقوم كل واحد بعلاقاته الشخصية، وإنما حل جماعي. فهذا ممكن وهو الأفضل، لأنه يجنب ليبيا انتشار الأسلحة والميليشيات إلى آخره والتدخلات الأجنبية التي تساعد على أو تتسبب أيضا في تواصل الأزمة. هذا مع الأسف أعترف أننا لم ننجح في تحقيقه إلى حد الآن، لكن هذا لا يمنعنا من أن نواصل العمل من أجل ذلك. فهو الحل الأمثل في نظري لعدة أسباب، باعتبار ليبيا إحدى البلدان المغاربية. فيما يتعلق بغلق الحدود، هذا أغلقت منذ سنة 94، لم تمنع القيام بعمل ما، فليس لم تقضي تماما على العمل المغاربي، وإنما كان الاتحاد المغاربي قد اضمحل، لكنها عائق من العوائق التي نأمل أن تزول شيئا فشيئا.
شكرا سي طيب، شكرا. طبيعي أن المسار والمسيرة ليست سهلة أمام كل التحديات التي تحدثتم عنها. I agree that the process is not that easy. There are so many challenges in building the Arab Maghreb Union, but as Sir Tayyip said, the efforts are relentless and continuous in order to overcome all these differences towards the objective of creating or cementing, I would say, the unity and integration of the Maghreb Union. My questions, are there any other questions? Any other questions? أي أسئلة؟ My question, Sir Tayyip, and to all the others, I see that Sir Tayyip mentioned his efforts as a professor, as academic, to bring together the ministers of education, and of course, during the peak of the crisis in that region regarding what's called the 2011 upheaval, called wrongly the Arab Spring, and where his efforts to bring together the ministers of education to tackle one of the challenges, which is education and the CVE, combating violent extremism, and others. I would ask a question to Sid Tayyib and the other speakers on how do you judge or assess the role of civil society in civil society, academia, and others who are strong believers of the imminence of the Maghreb Union, and I'm sure that there is beside the level of frustration, there is also a determination that the process should continue, should overcome all the obstacles. سؤالي أنه رغم الجهود اللي بذلت وتفضلتم بذكر أنها عويصة أمام التحديات، هل هناك رؤية إلى ما يمكن أن يقوم به المجتمع المدني بكل أطيافه الأكاديمية، العلمية، الثقافية، في خلق مناخ للتفكير وتحويل هذه الأفكار إلى ربما خطوات عملية تجاه بناء المغرب العربي؟ شكرا.
أعتقد أن مجال العمل في مستوى المجتمع المدني أولا استراتيجيا هام جدا، ثانيا هو ممكن ويمكن أن تكون له نتائج هامة جدا، والمجال متسع. قضايا مثلا الجنس أو المرأة المغاربية يمكن أن تقوم بدور في هذا في إطار مغاربي. الجامعات والكتاب والأدباء والمفكرون والفنانون يمكن أن يقوموا بعمل في هذا الاتجاه، أيضا يحتاج فقط إلى إمكانيات وإلى تنسيق. البنوك المغاربية، يوجد اتحاد بنوك مغاربية نحن نتعامل معه ومع جامعات مغاربية لتشجيع الشباب على القيام ببحوث يمكن أن تتحول في شكل دكتوراه أو غيرها، ولكن يمكن أن تتحول إلى مؤسسات صغرى ومتوسطة للشباب. فمجال العمل في هذا المستوى لا حد له، ونحن نسعى قدر الإمكان وفي حدود إمكانياتنا أن نقوم بذلك في هذه المستويات. ذكرت مثال البلديات المغاربية. البلديات شيء هام جدا لأنها أقرب إلى المواطنين في مستوى محلي، ونجحنا في أن نجمع عشرات البلديات أكثر من 5 أو 6 مرات في السنوات الأخيرة. إذن مجال العمل كبير جدا، ولا يجب أن نيأس وأن نلقي إن شاءنا السلاح كما يقال وأن نواصل العمل.
شكرا. سي جليل.
Thank you. I think the civil society role is extremely important. Preventing violent extremism. I mean, we see this in Tunisia, we see this in Algeria, we see it in Morocco, in the sense that they work directly with the people, especially in the marginalized poor areas, where often this is where the violent extremism takes place. I think so. I mean, we just talk about networks, informal networks, when we was just talking about Tunisia, and I mean, they help the people get jobs, housing, and so on, which is extremely important. Also, block the violent extreme speech. Schools as well play an important role. We talked about this last time in promoting. It's not just schooling system. I think it's important. It's the critical thinking, as we call it. It's much more than knowledge. The ability to think on your own, and critical thinking. Most of the people we meet that have been involved in this lack critical thinking. Somebody who comes, tells them this is the truth, this is the truth, and this is the wrong side, and you should follow the truth. As you all know, that the world is complicated. There's no truth. The absolute truth does not exist. And you need to critically think on your own, ask questions, think, verify, double check. Don't take into account. Don't take for granted what's being taught. I think the schools, the universities play an important role in this. That's what we do here in Akhawain. We try to do much more than knowledge, much more than the information that we do here in class. It's also to push the students to think on their own. One thing I do for my students personally is like, I told them, I don't like when you say, I agree with you, sir. I like when you tell me I disagree with you, sir. Agreeing with me is not a bad thing. So I think, I mean, what you mentioned is extremely important. Civil society, universities, schooling system is extremely important in combating and confronting this phenomenon.
Thank you. Any other questions or remarks?
Yes, Ms. Basma raised her hand.
Yes, go ahead, Basma.
So I will go back to Mr. Bakou's points on civil society. They are key in the integration. And he mentioned the Maghrebian women, universities, and coordination between them, scientific, arts, and I can add myself, sport. We can had as an example, the Cup World these days, and you can see how the MENA region, Arab people, Maghrebian people are supporting them, each others. So these are very good examples of how we can count on civil society and on the people also. Mr. Bakoush also mentioned the banks, the Maghrebian banks, and how they can develop startups with youth and also students. Students help them to do research about the Maghreb region or the MENA region. This can help all the officials later on, because when we have to think about the role of civil society and scientific and other sectors, we have to think not in a short term only. We have to think on a midterm and long-term results and objectives, and how to keep this feeling of the Maghreb region between and among youth is about all of these projects, scientific projects, civil society activities, under the portfolio of municipalities, Maghrebian ones, so on and so forth. All of this can help to keep this this feeling about the Maghreb region as it is a region, and it can work later on in a longer term objectives and strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for referring to the sports that, as we were offline with Sid Tayyib, we gathered from the reactions of different, as I would say, sides of the Maghreb Union and the MENA region, that sports have unified the, I would say, the public opinion or the populations of the whole Arab region, wishing all the best to the Moroccan team in its success story. And yes, we maybe sport could be another, is another element of unifying the Maghreb countries. If, for example, we go for Maghreb championships in different disciplines, football, other sports, and mainly also the women discipline was sports, which would involve women more actively in this process. I will think we have taken, this has been the longest webinar because of its interest. And if I don't see other questions, I will return to Sid Tayyib and Si Jalil and Basma for concluding remarks. Sid Tayyib, لم نعد نرى أسئلة ويبدو الاجتماع طال لأهميته، فسوف نختمه ببعض الملاحظات الختامية من سعادتكم ومن حضرة المتكلمين الآخرين. تفضل سي طيب.
أظن أن أفضل ما أختم به هو أن أقول انطلاقا مما أثرنا من قضايا ومسائل، يمكن أن نفكر في صيغ أخرى لمزيد التعمق في هذه المسائل، مسألة محور بمناسبات قادمة، لأن هذا هو نوع من التهيئة لتفكير معمق في قضايا المنطقة وبكل مكوناتها، وباعتبارها غير معزولة وإنما هي داخلة في إطار أشمل، وكل شيء الآن أصبح معولما من شأنه، فلا يمكن أن نتحدث عن منطقة معزولة. لهذا اقتراحي هو أن نفكر معا في ندوات بأشكال مختلفة مثل هذه أو غيرها، في نأخذ قضايا لنتعمق فيها أكثر، فهذا هو إطار عام. هذا اقتراح مثلا من الاقتراحات.
شكرا Mr. Bakush. Concrete as usual and realistic, suggests that starting from now we have to start thinking IMA and IPI MENA of more focused sectoral encounters that will tackle in depth the various elements of the matter, of the project, of the initiative, of the scheme, of the dream of the Maghreb populations. And I would say, yes, sir, we will do that. And Dalia and your team will we will meet with them and brainstorm on what's next. And let's make 2023 as a main year for the materializing these research think tanking toward do tanking with regard to the Maghreb Union and of course its natural dimensions, Mediterranean, Sub-Saharan and the Middle East. Thank you very much. Jalil? Professor Jalil is still here?
Oh, sorry, no, I just turned off the sound because I have students who knocked on my door. Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't. No, I'm simply I wanted to say thank you very much for inviting me, to Dr. Bakush, to Mrs. Basma, and you inviting me. I mean, at my level, I mean, you can say Hawaii and myself personally, I mean, I'm open to any work that could help this proposition that you, Dr. Bakush, and yourself made, and hopefully it will be it's a first for future project collaborations. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Professor. And I would call on you to start thinking of how to bring other academic institutions, universities, research centers towards thinking together on how to maybe unveil those very important sectors, the role of universities in research, scientific research on the different challenges facing the Maghreb region. Thank you. Sayyida Basma.
Thank you.
Sayyida Basma.
Yes. As per me, I would like to thank you again, and I would like to say that, as Mr. Bakush said, we can tackle some of these topics one by one. And for example, we can have also a session about women in the Maghreb region and in the MENA region. We just talked about what we are doing in relationship with the peace and security. But I will say, like, for example, I'm traveling this Saturday to participate in a meeting in the African Union about FAMWISE in peace and security. And what I noticed is that they have a group in Africa of women that they are participating to resolve conflicts between countries in Africa. This lobbying group is working under the peace and security in the African Union. They have 250 women, and they have only 3 Maghrebian women with them. And they are asking us to provide them with a group of women that they can help in solving conflicts and putting countries together and initiating a dialogue for peace in the region. I will just mention this example to say that we need to do a lot of work in many subjects. One of the most important is women in the Maghreb region, and also youth, role of youth in the universities, role of youth in peace process, role of youth in the integration, on the belief in the Maghreb region as a strong group that they can collaborate together in many fields, so on and so forth. So I'm just saying that all of these issues we can tackle them, as you said, in 2023, and this is our objective with IPI. And I would like to thank you again and again for opening the floor for UMA to be to know what's going on, and to know that and not just focus on some newspaper that they are saying UMA is dead, UMA is not working, the General Secretary is in, sectorial projects and groups are working, we are collaborating with civil society and scientific, but what it is known is just the conflicts, and we have maybe to work on communication more, or for sure we have to work on communication more, and to communicate what we are doing. And we, despite all of these challenges, we are still we are trying to do our best, and we count on your support and help, also as a group of diplomats, civil society, and scientific. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think you have started the agenda of our meeting. So I think you all agree that we should start with one of the most important matter, which is women. That will be our first activity, but we have to be more focused on that. And then it will be followed by youth. I think there are 2 elements of discussion and reflection, and that will involve, we have to do some preparatory work in that regard, and let's start 2023 with that. If we can have quite regular encounters, that will be preceded by some brainstorming, research, and all that, I will be more than happy. Dalia will join me and IPI MENA and on saying that will be a good start for 2023. I will wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And without further details, I'm glad we had this webinar on a very important matter, which is the challenges and maybe opportunities of the Maghreb Union. شكرا جزيلا سي طيب، شكرا سي جليل، شكرا سيدة بسمة، إلى اللقاء، وشكرا لسعادة السفراء الحاضرين، وشكرا لزملائنا وإخواننا في المجتمع المدني. شكرا.